You blinked, and just like that, the vibe in Boston flipped from celebration to tension. There's serious movement happening behind the scenes that could shake up the team's future. We're talking potential blockbuster trades, heavy hitter names on the table, and even a return no one saw coming. The front office needs to be surgical because what's about to go down could redefine everything. And there's one explosive detail that could catch a lot of fans off guard. Are we heading for a major rebuild, or is this all smoke? You won't believe what we've got for you today. So get comfy, hit that like button, and let's dive straight into the news. Imagine being on top of the world champions, the whole city celebrating, yet still knowing that the future could blow up at any moment. That's exactly where the Boston Celtics stand right now. And strangely enough, their biggest battle isn't on the court, it's in the boardroom. The 2025 offseason is already off to a tense start, and the front office is staring down a massive dilemma. The team is deep in what the league calls the second apron, a brutal salary tier that comes with severe penalties and locks down almost all roster flexibility. That idea of running it back with the championship squad, forget it. Keeping the roster intact could end up costing them far more than money. It could stall the team's growth for years. And here comes the bombshell. The Celtics are preparing to make serious changes. Big ones. According to reporter Grant Afset from RG.org, Boston could be one of the most aggressive teams on draft night. That's right. Even though they hold picks number 28 and 32, the team's been extremely quiet when it comes to scouting point guards. You know what that usually means? Something's brewing behind the scenes. The report also mentions the Celtics are eyeing opportunities with teams like Oklahoma City and Brooklyn, both of which are loaded with higher picks and open to trade talks. Here's the part that gets real. This doesn't feel like long-term strategy. It feels urgent. The core that took Boston to the mountaintop may be nearing its final chapter, not because it failed, but because the NBA's financial system is forcing a breakup. Harsh, absolutely, but real. Brad Stevens and his team are standing at a fork in the road. Keep the core and sacrifice the future, or let go of beloved pieces in exchange for flexibility and long-term health. It's tough to picture the Celtics without some of the battle-tested names that have led deep playoff runs for nearly a decade. But if the front office wants to avoid being handcuffed by luxury tax penalties that limit trades, signings, and even coaching hires, they've got to act fast. Draft night could be the trigger point. What happens there will say a lot about where the Celtics are heading, both next season and beyond. The fan base is split. Some want to run it back. Others think it's time for a reset. Either way, this front office can't afford to flinch. One wrong move could cost them years. And even with a fresh championship banner hanging at TD Garden, no one's truly safe. Not even the players the fans worship. But if you think that's intense, hold on. Because the most unexpected name in this entire conversation might be at the center of a blockbuster deal. And no, this isn't just a theory. If one player defines the Celtics' fighting spirit over the past few years, it's Jaylen Brown. Loyal, competitive, and often the emotional engine of the team. But as painful as it is to admit, his name is now officially being floated in trade talks. Not because Boston wants it, but because a powerhouse team sees an opening. And I'm not just talking about cap space. I'm talking about a franchise with a bold vision and the assets to make it happen. Get this, the San Antonio Spurs are monitoring Brown's situation closely, and their plan is pretty clear. If they strike out on Giannis or Durant, plan B goes by the name Jaylen Brown. The Spurs front office has reportedly signaled they'd be willing to offer a massive package, and we're not talking small change. We're talking about the kind of offer that makes even a veteran GM sit back and think twice. They've got the number 2 pick in the draft. They've got young talent already surrounding Victor Wembanyama, and yes, they're even considering including De'Aaron Fox in a potential deal. It's wild to imagine Brown in another jersey, but when a top 2 pick and an all-star guard are on the table, the conversation shifts fast. Still, there's one big reason holding Boston back. Jason Tatum's out with an Achilles injury and is expected to miss a big chunk of next season, and guess who's set to carry the load in his absence? Exactly, Jaylen Brown. Brad Stevens has already hinted that it would take an insane return to even consider moving him. Even then, it's a long shot. Brown finished last season averaging 22 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. But beyond the numbers, he was the Celtics' emotional stabilizer. When Tatum struggled, Jaylen stepped up. When the locker room went quiet, he spoke. Trading him now, with Tatum sidelined, would be a massive gamble and maybe even a PR nightmare. Fans, predictably, are in an uproar. Social media's lit up with anyone but Jaylen, and if they trade him, I'm done. But at the same time, there's a growing voice saying now's the best time to sell high. With his value at its peak, Brown could bring in a haul of picks and players to keep Boston competitive for the next decade. So here's the question. Do you bet on continuity or do you roll the dice on evolution? And that's not the only piece potentially being removed from the board. While everyone's eyes are on Brown, something quieter but equally important is happening beneath the radar, involving the Celtics head coach making moves outside the US. While the world watches the potential superstar trades unfold, something far more discreet but just as crucial is happening behind the scenes. And at the center of it all, Joe Mazzulla, the Celtics head coach, fresh off a title, is now racing against time to find cheap, effective role players who can make an impact right away. And guess what? He's been spotted? France? Yep, Mazzulla was recently seen in Europe scouting a raw but intriguing prospect, Noah Penda. Standing 6'8", 242 pounds, the French forward is catching eyes with his physicality, court awareness, and promising shot mechanics. Sounds like the perfect fit, right? Here's the snag. With the hype rising, it's unlikely he'll fall all the way to pick 28. So why would the head coach of the reigning NBA champs fly out personally to watch a guy who isn't even a projected lottery pick? One word: urgency. Boston is feeling the cap squeeze, and finding rotation players in the draft is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. Mazzulla knows it. The front office is bracing for the real possibility of losing 2 starters this offseason. That's right, 2. And we're not just talking about end-of-bench guys. Think Hauser, Horford, White. Anyone could be on the block. Everything hinges on what kind of offers come in by draft night. That means if Boston's gonna lose key contributors, they need cheap replacements who can deliver now, not 3 years from now. That's where Penda becomes a calculated risk. He might not carry lottery prestige, but he fits Boston's ideal mold. Big, versatile, unselfish, and ready to contribute. Still, it begs the question, do the Celtics really need another 6 forward, or should they be targeting a backup point guard or a true big man? As always, the fan base is split. Some love the idea of an international sleeper pick with upside. Others see it as a signal that the team's about to be torn apart. After all, if your head coach is scouting across the ocean, it probably means the gaps he's trying to fill are huge. And just as fans are digesting that news, boom, another twist. A veteran name, crucial to last year's title run, might be on his way out, and his potential landing spot? That's what could really spark a firestorm. You know that one player every fan respects? The guy who shows up in clutch moments, leads by example, and makes life hell for opposing guards? Yep, even he's not safe. Jrue Holiday, once the defensive anchor and playoff closer, is now very much on the trade table. Not because he can't play, but because his contract is a ticking time bomb. And here's the kicker. Miami is reportedly interested. That's right, the Miami Heat, Boston's bitterest playoff rival, might be the frontrunner for Holiday. And that raises a brutal question: would the Celtics really trade a veteran leader to a team that's tormented them for years? It all comes down to math. Holiday still has trade value despite a down year on offense. His defense is elite, and that still matters. Now here's where things get juicy. To make the trade work, the name floating as a possible return: Terry Rozier. That's right, Scary Terry. Once a playoff folk hero in Boston, Rozier was traded to Miami from Charlotte, but flamed out fast. He averaged just 10.6 points, 3.7 rebounds, and 2.6 assists this past season. And rumors swirled about off-court issues, including possible gambling problems that may have impacted his game. So why would Boston even consider bringing him back? 2 words: Jason Tatum. With JT out for most of the year, someone has to pick up the scoring slack. And Rozier, despite his flaws, can create his own shot and score in bunches, especially if he's mentally locked in and backed by the coach and fans. But it's big if. The deal is still in early stages. Nothing's locked in, but both sides know what they want. Miami wants a vet defender, Boston wants cap relief, but still needs to stay competitive. The pressure is coming from every direction: finances, fans, and the media. One wrong move here could send shockwaves. Some fans are already fuming at the idea of Rozier returning. Others think a smaller contract and fresh motivation might make it work. But one thing's for sure, trading Holiday to Miami for a guy in a slump could define the entire season. And if you thought that was the final twist, take a deep breath, because now it's time to step back and ask the one question no Celtics fan really wants to face: is this the beginning of the end for everything we've built?